Hi and welcome to the News at 7, where we get to the heart of the day's stories and communities across Scotland tonight. Police fears as security ramps up as Scotland prepares for President Trump's visit.
The last time President Trump visited Scotland, there was 22 more superintendents and 4 more chief superintendents and 950 more police officers.
We'll ask how potential protests are likely to be policed. Also tonight, the Commonwealth Games is yet to find a broadcaster to cover its events in Glasgow next year. Its interest in the event dwindling. And we'll have all the sport with Sheila too. What have you got for us tonight, Shields?
We'll look ahead to tomorrow night's qualifiers for Hibernian and Dundee United after Rangers got Scotland's European contingent going in some style at Ibrox last night.
And we get the inside stories on Ozzy Osbourne's Glasgow gigs. Hello, I'm Laura McKeever. Welcome to the News at 7. It could be the most high-profile, high-risk visit to Scotland made by any individual. And security is ramping up across Scotland as President Trump prepares to fly into Prestwick on Friday. Riot vans of police officers from London have been travelling up the M6 today, while at Aberdeen Airport, US Chinooks have been arriving in preparation. Here's an Air Force One cargo plane landing this afternoon, carrying the President's helicopter Marine One. He'll use that to travel between his golf courses at Turnberry in Ayrshire and many in Aberdeenshire. Well, the Scottish Police Federation has already said that resources and officer numbers are too stretched to deal with the visit. And today, Rob Hay from the Association of Scottish Police Superintendents gave this warning.
The last time President Trump visited Scotland, there was 22 more superintendents and 4 more chief superintendents and 950 more police officers than there are in Scotland today. So if you can imagine the impact of that on an operation such as this, it's no wonder that we're having to rely so heavily on mutual aid, and we're having to do things that would otherwise be anathema to us, such as 12-hour shifts throughout the period of that operation.
Well, Police Scotland have said they're creating a ring of steel around the President and warned the public that while it had the right to peaceful protest, it did not have the absolute right. So, what can the public and protesters expect from the police this weekend? Well, Dr Nick McCarroll's a law lecturer at Glasgow Caledonian University.
Well, there may be specific areas where protesters are allowed to protest. That's part of the limitations which can be imposed in Scotland under law, that you can be told that there's certain areas that you're not allowed to go to protest. And because this is quite a remote area, it may be very specific areas where they're allowed to do it, which may be quite a distance from President Trump. So that would be the first one, that where they actually carry it out. Now, if they try to break through that, that might be seen as breaking the rules of the protest and the limitations which the police and the authorities, normally the council, have imposed on the right to protest. So location is important. What they say and how they say it could also be relevant, particularly if they are expressing views which could be seen as linked to promoting violence of some description. So even though you do have freedom of expression alongside freedom of assembly, there are limitations on that as well. And if that language is viewed as being inciting violence, or for example, that could be a limitation which could see the police arresting somebody.
Will officers policing these protests be doing so any differently because this is a sitting president who has also had assassination attempts against him?
Well, that's a good question, and I think it probably not for Police Scotland in terms of how they are used to organising protests across the whole geography of Scotland, which is very different in Aberdeenshire than it is from the urban belt, the city centres and so on. However, remember, President won't just be covered by Police Scotland. There's police coming up from England, but there will also be Secret Service, which the President has, obviously, as a sitting president, who has to also interact with the more traditional policing. So that element of Secret Service, almost military-like protection, which sitting heads of state have, would also be mixed in.
There are also likely to be some pro-Palestinian protests this weekend as well. Are we expecting a different level of arrests given the new legislation that's just come in?
Well, that's another dimension towards freedom of expression and freedom of assembly, is that an organisation, Palestine Action, have now been prescribed as a terrorist organisation, and there's a whole set of laws under the Terrorism Act 2000 that somebody can be arrested for if they're seen as promoting or promoting or actively being a member of a prescribed organisation. And that can be expanded to words, to clothing specifically mentioned, T-shirts for example, and banners, badges and so on. If you have those and they're seen by the police, who are the immediate criminal arresting officers in doing that, they could intervene and do that. Now if that overlaps with the Trump protest, that could be quite difficult for the police in that area.
So once again, just remind us then, because we've seen people using specific form of words on banners or T-shirts, what is and is not acceptable?
Well, it's not been tested in law yet, and I think one of the things is that under the terrorism law, something can be prescribed, and Palestine Action was prescribed only a few weeks ago by the UK government. It has to be proportionate to prescribe it. That means to say, is it, for all the activity they carry out, is it proportionate that you ban them and treat their supporters as terrorists? The UK government think it is proportionate. That's subject to a legal challenge actually currently in London on that. But that means that everything that you would normally expect of expressing support for any political organisation, chanting, wearing a T-shirt, a badge, all of that can now be viewed as terrorist actions because of the Terrorism Act 2000.
OK, Nick, thank you for coming in and explaining that.
Thanks, Laura.
Well, we're always keen to hear from you, your thoughts and experiences about anything you hear tonight or you'd like us to cover. Do get in touch with a story if you like. Our email address is news7@bbc.co.uk. That's news7@bbc.co.uk. Next tonight, it is a year until the Commonwealth Games come back to Glasgow, but no broadcaster has yet finalised a deal to cover them. Today, organisers unveiled the mascot for next year's event, with a unicorn appearing on the Finnieston crane to reflect, they said, the city's history and culture. Well, let's get more now from our sports news correspondent, Chris McLaughlin, who is here with us. Chris, evening to you. So a new mascot, but we're still not sure how we're actually going to watch these events.
Yeah. A year to go for these big events is always an opportunity for the organisers to remind people what's coming, to try and create some buzz around the city. I think even more pertinent because this is going to be a scaled back games, the chance to launch a new mascot. It's going to be called Finny, a unicorn, of course, Scotland's national animal, a little nod to the Glasgow cone as well, with the horn as the traffic cone. So yeah, lots of attempts and pushes to try and create some kind of buzz around that. But there's so much hard work going on behind the scenes and some concern. You mentioned the broadcaster. Now, usually by this stage in the Commonwealth cycle, although this hasn't been a normal Commonwealth cycle, but usually at this stage, the UK broadcaster has been secured. And since 1954, that UK broadcaster has been the BBC. Now, my sources suggest that there's not the same appetite within the BBC as perhaps there once was, and a deal at this stage is some way off. Now, the BBC might well come back and do a deal. It may well be that the broadcasters look, or the organisers look to another broadcaster, but to lose that historic tie with the national broadcaster would be a blow. Still time, but it would be a blow.
And as you say, a scale-back event, a result of Victoria and Australia deciding not to host. Is this all just a sign of dwindling interest in the Commonwealth Games?
I can see why you're asking that, and I think the organisers would refute that. I think they will say that people in Glasgow love a party and people will get behind this no matter what. They'll look back to 2014 and say some people questioned whether or not Glasgow would get behind that. There is no doubt there are challenges for these games, absolutely no doubt. One of the key messages for the organisers has been to remind the Glaswegians that this won't cost anything from the public purse. But yes, if they don't secure the BBC as a broadcaster, it will be a blow reputationally. There's no doubt about that.
And just quickly, Chris, then what are the broadcasters saying?
BBC saying very little, basically saying they don't comment on broadcast rights discussions. Others similarly. The broadcasters or the organisers are convinced they will have someone in the next couple of weeks, a broadcaster. Who that broadcaster might be remains to be seen. OK, well, we'll know more soon, but thank you for the update, Chris.
And thank you for joining us on tonight's News at 7. More to come in the programme, including we get advice on how to plan for the future amid warnings workers aren't saving enough for their pensions, and that the retirement age could increase again.
More sunshine on the way tomorrow and temperatures responding up to 22 or 23 degrees, but the cloud returns for Friday. I'll have a full forecast later in the programme.
An NHS consultant admitted breaching a warning not to discuss a case involving an altercation between a transgender doctor and a nurse while an investigation into the matter was being carried out. Dr Kate Searle was also questioned about the sharing of messages among staff about the incident involving Dr Beth Upton and nurse Sandy Peggy and the use of a female changing room at a hospital in Fife. Louise Cowie reports.
Dr Kate Searle arrives to give evidence for a second day at the Employment Tribunal in Dundee. She is a consultant in emergency medicine and is Dr Beth Upton's supervisor. Dr Searle continued to be questioned about messages that were sent between staff in the aftermath of an altercation between Dr Upton and nurse Sandy Peggy over the use of a female changing room at Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy, an incident that led to Miss Peggy's suspension. Dr Searle denied knowingly withholding emails from the tribunal. Dr Searle was asked about a healthcare worker Dr Upton had told her had been present during another incident the doctor claimed had taken place. Dr Upton had told Dr Searle that Miss Peggy had refused to engage in conversation over a patient, something Dr Upton said was witnessed by the other member of staff. When Miss Peggy's lawyer mentioned her name, Dr Searle broke down. She said she was worried about getting someone involved in the process who had told her they didn't want to be involved. Naomi Cunningham suggested Dr Searle was trying to gather evidence from the healthcare worker to support Dr Upton's version of events. Miss Cunningham put it to her, "Were you horrified when I mentioned her name, not out of a desire to protect her, but out of a desire to protect yourself and the consequence of making up something she said?" Dr Searle replied, "Absolutely not." When asked if speaking to the healthcare worker had been a flagrant breach of a warning not to breach confidentiality by discussing the case, Dr Searle replied, "In hindsight, yes." NHS Fife's lawyer later said Miss Cunningham's questions left a little to be desired. Last week, Sandy Peggy was cleared of allegations of misconduct, failures of patient care and misgendering Dr Upton, who is a transgender woman, following an investigation by NHS Fife. Miss Peggy claims her treatment was unlawful under the 2010 Equality Act and brought the case against the Health Board. It denies this and is defending the action. The tribunal continues tomorrow. Louise Cowie, reporting Scotland, Dundee.
Right, let's get a roundup now of the stories making the BBC News app in Scotland. And convicted drug smuggler J. Emmanuel Thomas has returned to football after being released from prison. The ex-Arsenal, Livingston and Aberdeen striker was jailed for masterminding the importation of £600,000 worth of cannabis. The family of a 14-year-old boy who died after being hit by a car in East Ayrshire have paid tribute to him and urged witnesses to come forward. Aidan McCluckie was struck by a Vauxhall Corsa on the A76 near Hurlford. And does Edinburgh's Royal Mile really need 72 gift shops? Locals are telling BBC News how the tourist industry's transformed the once normal area. For more details on all of these stories and more, you can scan the QR code. It's there for you on the screen now and it'll take you to the BBC Scotland News app. There's more for you, including the sale of a historic pub in Lochaber to the local community. Now, are we saving enough money for our retirement? Well, the Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall thinks we aren't, and she's announced a review which could see the retirement age rise again and wants to look at overhauling the whole pension system. Here's some of what she had to say.
Unless we act, tomorrow's pensioners will be poorer than today's, because people who are saving aren't saving enough for their retirement, and crucially, because almost half of the working age population isn't saving anything for their retirement at all. Women who are now approaching retirement have half the private pension wealth of men. Only 1 in 5 of the self-employed are saving into a private pension, down from half in the late 1990s, meaning over 3 million self-employed people currently aren't saving anything at all for their retirement.
So what is the best way to save and how much should we be putting away? Well, let's speak now to Robert Cochrane, who's a pensions expert with Scottish Widows. Good evening, Robert. Thank you so much for coming in. So 2 reviews going on, if you like, at the moment. Can you just explain, first of all, what this revived Pensions Commission is looking into?
Yeah, absolutely. So right at the start of this century, way back in 2002, there was a pension commission because they recognised that less and less people were saving for their pensions. Those kind of gold-plated final salary schemes were disappearing and people weren't saving. So They created a pension commission. It was like 3 experts and it was cross-party support, and they put in something called auto-enrolment. And auto-enrolment led to about 12 million people now in pension schemes, so broadly those are people who are in employment. Separate to that, you've got another thing running, which, as you say, was this kind of state pension review as well. And the two things are pretty separate.
And the state pension, the age at which we might receive that, is now under review. For some, but not all of us, who have private pensions, that could have big implications, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, state pension goes through a regular review process, so that happens anyway. We're living longer, and that means that the state pension pays out for a longer period of time. But one thing to point out here, that there's a 10-year notice period before any change, because I was actually on one of your radio shows and somebody was a bit worried that they wouldn't be getting the state pension. They were in their 60s. It'll not affect them. So basically, if you're over 56, you're likely to get the state pension age that you think you're getting.
So what is the best advice then to people? Particularly, there are uncertainties, aren't there, especially around women and different age groups, younger people as well. But what is the best advice for people right now who are trying to think about the future?
Well, the very best advice is, if you're in work, join your workplace pension. Because if you do that, your employer pays contributions in, then you'll get some benefit from taxman and you'll get your own contributions as well. So for workers, it's pretty straightforward. For people that are self-employed and for people that have lower earnings, it's a bit more challenging, and that's exactly what the Pension Commission is set out to do, to look at those groups of people. So you mentioned there's 3 million self-employed people who are not in pension schemes. When the Pension Commission took place, there was no such thing as the gig economy, and now we find ourselves where there's lots of people working the gig economy. They're not getting enrolled into pension schemes, so it's about widening the net and then thinking about what contribution levels are the appropriate levels.
And I suppose it's easy for people to think, oh, it's too late. You know, I'm in my late 40s now. I take it you'll disagree with that.
I absolutely disagree. If you haven't started saving, the very best day to start savings today.
Yeah, OK, there you go. Clear as anything. Robert, thank you so much for coming in tonight. Good to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Still to come, we have the weather with Christopher, and also Billy Sloan, the music journalist, shares his memories of the Black Sabbath frontman Ozzy Osbourne, who's died at the age of 76. First though, time to get the sport with Sheila.
Hello there. Rangers got a big week of European football for Scottish clubs up and running last night. Teenager Finlay Curtis says he was congratulated by Sir Alex Ferguson after scoring the opening goal in the Ibrox side's Champions League qualifying win against Panathinaikos. The 18-year-old was making his first start for Rangers when he struck in the second half before new signing Jedi Gassama made it 2-0. The sides are meeting again in Athens next week. Curtis says it was a night he'll never forget and talked about the moment he told his family he was playing.
Texted my mum and dad, told them, and they started crying. So yeah, it was a good family moment. My mum came through to me and was like, "You need to get your sleep and all that." But I was on top of it. I was excited, and I didn't get much sleep. But woke up this morning, and yeah, I'm just buzzing.
It was intense. It was, honestly, the crowd were incredible tonight. So I'm really grateful for that, and hopefully they've gone away feeling that this could be an exciting season for their team and their club. And we will give it everything we can to make that the case.
What a moment for Finlay Curtis. Well, Hibernian and Dundee United get their European qualifying campaigns underway tomorrow night. David Gray's side have just arrived in Denmark, where they'll play Midtjylland in the Europa League. Dundee United will host Una Strazen from Luxembourg in the Conference League second round qualifier at Tannadice tomorrow night. Earlier, I spoke to former United and Hibs midfielder Scott Allen about these ties and also about that Rangers victory last night.
Yeah, I think first and foremost it's a great result. I think it was clear to see there was some teething problems in the first half, which you would expect. Obviously, new system, new players, new manager, but I think they came out second half. Obviously getting the goal, young Finlay Curtis with a real impact in that second half. Good to see a young Scottish player as well coming in and doing so well. And then the red card, I thought that was the changing moment in the game, and from then on Rangers were in full control.
People might have thought would it be a brave move from Russell Martin starting the 18-year-old in such a huge game?
Yeah, they would, but I think if the Rangers fans who have seen him, he does carry that that real pace up front. I think he's very direct, and that's something all managers want in their squad. Someone, when they do receive the ball in the wide areas, can go and create chances and get shots away, and that's what he done last night, and it reaped rewards for Russell Martin.
Do you think that result is going to be enough going over to Athens in the heat next week?
Listen, I think we've seen Rangers over the years, they've put in performances where they've had to defend as a team. They're going to have to do that, and a lot of defending when they go there, but I think they've got the players there. I think they've got guys with experience at that level who have done that before, so I would fully expect Rangers to come through the tie.
A couple of other Scottish teams in action tomorrow in Europe. First up, Hibs in the Europa League qualifiers against Midtjylland, a team that have had plenty of experience in Europe in recent years. Yeah, there's no getting away from the fact it's a real difficult task for Hibs to go over there and get a result. A team who, as you say, have a wealth of experience in Europe, players who leave and go on to bigger and better things and across the board in Europe. But listen, I think David Gray will be happy with the signings he's made. I think Hibs as a team, they'll have to all defend to a man, and when they have the ball, they'll have to counter-attack well. I did see a bit of Midtjylland at the weekend, and they did look like they could give up some chance in the wide area. So if you're Nicky Caddens, you're Martin Boyle, they might look to use that counter-attack and go and hurt them, but they will have to defend as a team. And Dundee United also tomorrow in the Conference League qualifiers. They're up against Unistraz and a team from Luxembourg. A lot of people already looking ahead to the next round and who they could get in that one, but United will be warned about being complacent, won't they? Yeah, I think Jim and his team will know that. They'll obviously treat them with the utmost respect. Obviously they'll know the job in hand to go over there and get a result. I think from a Dundee United perspective, there's been a lot of signings, so we don't quite know as of yet what they're going to look like, but I think it's a tie Dundee United and their fans would expect to win, but they have to go and show that on the pitch. It's really tough at this stage of the season, isn't it, for teams to be up and ready when they've made so many signings? Yeah, it is, but sometimes these are the games you need to kind of get that match sharpness up to speed. There's obviously a lot at stake for all the clubs involved, and they want to come through these ties. Big night tomorrow then. Plenty more on these stories on the BBC Sports Scotland website. There's also an update on Darcy Graham's injury for the British and Irish Lions, and news on Cameron Norrie's first victory over a top 10 player in 2.5 years. Non-stop. Do you remember when your mum used to come in and tell you to go to sleep for work tomorrow?
I love that. Just goes to show you are never too old to be told by your
indeed.
mum to get to your bed. Sheila, thank you. Now, it is 37 years since the legendary rocker Ozzy Osbourne played to a sold-out crowd at Glasgow's Barrowlands Ballroom, and last night his family confirmed the 76-year-old Black Sabbath frontman had died. In a statement, they said, "It is with more sadness than mere words can convey that we have to report that our beloved Ozzy Osbourne has passed away. He was with his family and surrounded by love," they said. Well, one of those people who saw the love for the musician firsthand is the music journalist Billy Sloan, who came in earlier to share some memories.
He was a real, as you would imagine, larger-than-life character, you know, a very, very colourful, very, very controversial. And I was lucky enough to interview him on 4 separate occasions. I saw Black Sabbath for the first time in March of 1973 when they played the old Greens Playhouse Cinema at the top of Renfield Street in Glasgow, which of course later became the Apollo. I got a phone call one day, this was in the mid-90s, when he was on his solo career, from a guy at Epic Records, a promo guy, who said, "Ozzy wants to do an interview, you know, a TV interview," he said, to promote his new album, and he wants to do it at the Apollo. And I said, well, the Apollo closed down in 1985 and then they demolished it in 1987. I say, so it doesn't exist anymore. It's a big kind of hole in the ground with a fence around it. I don't think he realises that. He says, so I'll get back in touch. So he phoned back the next day. He went, no, he wants to do it at the Apollo. So on the day, you'll think I'm making this up, on the day the big limo arrives opposite the Pavilion Theatre in Glasgow, which still exists, and Ozzy gets out with his security guy, and we walk down the little lane between Renfield Street and the concert hall stage door at West Nile Street, and there was a bit of the fence that we pulled open, and we all kind of scrambled down in the rubble and planks of wood and stuff like that. And he started to pace out where he thought the stage would have been and where his microphone would have been, and he went, right, this was where I would have been standing on the stage of the Apollo if it still existed, looking out into the stalls and the balcony, which bounced up and down in the upper circle. And we stood there for 20 minutes as people were going past in the bus in West Nile Street, looking over the fence going, is that Ozzy Osbourne?
He was such a character, wasn't he? A total unique.
Yeah, I mean, he was born in 1948, and then in 1968 became a founder member of Black Sabbath alongside Tony Iommi on guitar and Geezer Butler on bass and Bill Ward on drums. And they had incredible success. You know, the first 3 Black Sabbath albums in the early 1970s kind of were pioneering albums in terms of, you know, heavy metal music, to, you know, put it in that kind of pigeonhole. But, you know, between Black Sabbath and his solo career, you know, they sold something in excess of 100 million records.
How will he be remembered, do you think?
We did not think it was going to come just 17 days after that historic gig, you know, at Aston Villa Stadium on home soil in Birmingham. You know, and the show raised millions of pounds for local hospitals. And when I heard the news last night, I must say it kind of stopped me in my tracks, because in recent weeks we've lost Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, we've lost Sly Stone from Sly and the Family Stone. So it's getting to the stage now where every time you turn on the radio or pick up a newspaper or switch on TV, another great is gone. And, you know, they ain't coming back. So, you know, we should just thank our lucky stars that we lived in the same era as somebody as crazy but as creative as Ozzy Osbourne. He really was one of a kind.
Billy, thank you so much for sharing those memories with us. Really good to see you. Billy Sloan there, remembering Ozzy Osbourne, who's died yesterday at the age of 76. Right, it's time for some weather now. Christopher's here. Chris McLaughlin got a wee bit of sunburn today, he was saying unexpectedly.
Well, it is summer. The sun is strong.
Cloudy though, through the clouds.
Yes, you can still get burnt through the clouds. There was a lot of cloud around today, a bit of sunshine too. In fact, lots of pictures once again from our weather watchers. The borders there, Peebles, you can just about make out a few glimpses breaking through the cloud. Rather grey over Edinburgh Castle, but at the other end of the M8 there were some glimmers of sunshine, a bit more on the way tomorrow as well. Let me show you what's going on, because we've got a ridge of high pressure working its way in from the southwest, and that should afford us a largely dry day tomorrow. But beyond that, weather front's moving in with this area of low pressure up towards Iceland, and a fresher westerly feel as well. So some sunshine around tomorrow, and then a little more in the way of cloud. First thing, we've got some cloud through central and eastern parts, perhaps even 1 or 2 light showers towards Fife there and up towards the far northeast. Around the west coast, there could be some areas of low cloud on the coast and across the hills, much like today. And for the Northern Isles, variable cloud, a few bright spells and a few showers. But it's an improving picture tomorrow, because as we head through towards late morning and early afternoon, sunshine is set to develop and temperatures responding up to 22 or 23 degrees. So a bit more sunshine around, but then more cloud moving in by the end of the day. It's a warm front followed by a cold front, and that means on Friday a cloudy start with some patches of light rain or drizzle, but like tomorrow it should improve. So as we head through towards lunchtime and the afternoon, that cloud tending to clear and some brighter skies coming through, but a fresher feel. Temperatures for many mid to high teens, maybe 20 degrees, to the northeast still up to 22. That takes us to Saturday, and probably the favoured of the 2 days this weekend. Mostly dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures again high teens, maybe 20 Celsius. By the time we reach Sunday, we've got a feature moving in towards the northwest, bringing some showery outbreaks of rain. And beyond that, you can see we've got high pressure trying to arrive, but all the while these weather fronts are set to move in as well. So a bit of a mixed picture as we go into next week. This is the second half of the weekend though. This is Sunday. You can see that feature bringing some showers towards the west and northwest. The further south and east that you are across Scotland, the drier and brighter it will be. And then for Monday, the wind's coming in from the northwest, never a particularly warm direction. A few showers around, some brighter moments to be had at times too. So you can see on the outlook, a bit of a mixed picture really, but certainly tomorrow some sunshine, and Saturday the better of the days this weekend. That's the forecast for now.
I'll favour Saturday, I'll take that. Thank you, Chris. And thank you so much, as always, for your company tonight here on the News at 7. There is more on all of our stories over on the BBC News Scotland website. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Amy Irons will be here again at 7. From all of us here, though, good night. Bye-bye.